1 in 3 women in the US are going through or have undergone a hysterectomy.
When we feel something's not right, something's usually not right. We're embracing this as women and the things we have to go through and making them a positive, supportive thing instead of a scary, dramatic taboo, not being afraid to ask, but then understanding that it is truly your own journey.
Hot Flash Health Podcast, where we're dishing out unfiltered truths about menopause with a side of sass and a sprinkle of crass. Get ready to dive into the wild world of hot flashes, mood swings, and all the other joys of being a queenager. No, this ain't your grandma's podcast. We're here to chat about our bodies, our passions, our fears, and desires, all while navigating the roller coaster ride of menopause. So grab a glass of wine or 3, kick back, and let's ride this hot flash wave together. I'm Courtney Mamusha, and alongside me is my fabulous co-host, Dawn Fable. We're just 2 outspoken gals who aren't afraid to say it like it is. Now let's kick off today's episode. Dawn, why don't you go ahead and introduce today's amazing guest?
Oh, ladies, hold on to your seats because today we have got a badass mama jama, my friend Tracy Swanson. Tracy is an incredible human being, an incredible professional with an MBA and over 20 years of leadership experience under her belt. Trace, I must say, I never knew you had an MBA, and although I always knew you were super smart, that was amazing to find that out. Tracy has held digital commerce partnerships for Coca-Cola. She's been a lecturer at the University of Wisconsin. She mentors future MBA stars. But don't let her impressive resume fool you. She's amazing on a snowboard. She has the best taste in music you'll ever see. And she is a suburban cougar who is keeping it real. Tracy is not only a friend of mine, but she's one who has been so honest and so vulnerable in some of the most life-altering experiences a woman can go through, having a hysterectomy. It's crazy to think that 1 in 3 women in the US are going through or have undergone a hysterectomy, yet there's so much mystery and silence about it. So after a couple margaritas and not much convincing the other night, I convinced Tracy to be on our Hot Flash Health podcast to break the silence and stigma around hysterectomies, share with her experience. So girl, we're deep in it. You're navigating life with 2 amazingly beautiful boys, and from puberty battles to life post-surgery, you're thriving, you're beautiful. I'm sure it's not been an easy road, but thank you for being here today and sharing this light on a super important topic that, interestingly, seems to be popping up everywhere with my circle of friends.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You're too kind. You maybe don't see all the warts and all the ugly stuff, but
So, kind of let's dig into the elephant of the room and talk about your uterus or lack thereof at this point. So you were scheduled for a partial hysterectomy in 2022, I believe, but you really had some concerns around the procedure and what it would do to your hormones. Can you dive into a little bit of what was going on in your brain and how you really overcame this and tackled it?
Yeah, definitely. So anyone who's had endometriosis or symptoms of that, it's very painful. It's very life-altering sometimes. I remember I was on a ski trip with a bunch of guys. I was the only girl up in the mountains and had to somehow tell them I could not go snowboarding that day because I could barely walk without doubling over in pain. And thankfully, these guys were all longtime friends. And so talking about my uterus was kind of a joke and kind of funny with them. But that particular moment drove me back into my doctor to really talk about what my options were. And interesting because finding the right doctor is so crucially important in this type of decision, because I think there are a lot of women who just want to hear that it's okay, a hysterectomy is okay, right? They don't want to find somebody that's going to try and talk them out of a procedure or talk them into 6 months of plan A. And if that doesn't work, we'll go into 6 months of plan B. And my doctor was very, very open and honest with me and just gave me a lot of options pertaining to how to manage it. You can have the ablation done where they just go in and do the scrape, or you can have the hysterectomy done. And she just said to me, I'll be very honest, if we go in and we scrape, you're probably going to be back here at some point because this condition has a tendency to come back. And so however aggressive you want to be, I'm willing to support you and we'll go ahead and do it. And so she was just really crucial in helping me navigate what the options were and then just making me feel okay with my decision to say goodbye to my uterus. Came with all sorts of other conversations. I was going to keep ovaries at that point. That happened later on, which we can chat about too, because that's ultimately where the conversation around menopause came in with her.
Yeah. So Trace, you were scheduled for that partial hysterectomy in 2022, and you chose not to do it at that moment. But if you fast forward to 2023, and surprise, they found a mass leading to some sort of crazy procedure. Is that how things went down? What was your true journey on this? Did you actually have a hysterectomy back in 2022, or did you decide against it and then move forward to 2023 and had both of these procedures?
No, great question. My reproductive system failed me a couple of times. So I did have the partial hysterectomy in 2022. I decided to keep my ovaries at that point because I didn't want to be thrown into menopause. And at that point, there was nothing wrong and nothing concerning about that. So my recovery from the partial hysterectomy was truly just the recovery from surgery, right? So it's 6 to 8 weeks of just not doing a lot of physical activity, no sex, no working out, any of that stuff. But then fast forward a year, I think women are so in touch with our bodies. We feel like when we feel something's not right, something's usually not right. And something wasn't right. And I went back into my doctor and they did an ultrasound and an MRI and found a very large mass on my ovary. And so at that point, it was, we need to go in and see what this is and see if we need to remove it or take a biopsy. And, as a woman, you just think about all the things that could potentially be going wrong. At that point, my partner Seth took me out to lunch and basically told me to stop crying because people would think he's breaking up with me because here I am thinking I have cancer. And I just I couldn't navigate how my life would be in that realm. And my heart goes out to anyone who is going through that or has gone through that, because your whole world flashes before you, right? You're raising kids, everything. And so again, I was with a doctor, an oncology gynecologist that gave me some options. And at that point, she said, we can, again, just go in and do a biopsy and see what it is, or we can just go in and remove the one ovary. And at that point, I don't need them. I have 2 beautiful children and 1 beautiful stepdaughter. And I just said, let's go in and take them both out. But then what does that mean? And so that's where the conversation came around to menopause and the symptoms that were going to be coming on board. And little known to me at the time, because I had not had a lot of conversations with my own mother about menopause. I was already experiencing night sweats and irritability and just brain fog, a lot of the things that are true symptoms of that, which I just thought was a result of drinking a lot of wine at night and not sleeping well and having a lot on my plate and just forgetting things. It really brought this conversation around menopause and the symptoms to the forefront with her and what things would be like post oophorectomy, which is the removal of the ovaries, and how I could manage that through hormone replacement or Eastern medicine, a more holistic method.
That's crazy. You and I were kind of chatting before we even started the podcast about kind of major surgery. I just had heart surgery last week. You had to undergo this surgery. And it's scary for anybody out there who's got to think about their kids and what might happen. And when they're like, do you have an advanced directive? And you're like, what the fuck? So I get it. And proud of you for going through all of this in multiple facets and overcoming it. And, I'll just kind of switch gears a little bit to be how bitchy girls can be and how much stigmatism is out there. So let's kind of break the silence a little bit about some of the taboos and what people might have been saying to you around this procedure with a hysterectomy. I mean, there's no shame to it, but can you kind of address what you might have heard? And hopefully everybody was supportive, but there's a lot of talk about like, why the fuck would you do that to your body? And I just think that's like, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, no, I'm in full alignment with that. Listen, it's so bizarre to me. Someone once told me that if women could stop like stabbing each other in the back, we would rule the world because we are so powerful. And if you get us all together and going on the same page, fuck everybody else, because we would make we would solve all the world's problems, right? But instead, we have this cattiness and we have, well, I did it this way. And it's happened since pregnancy, right? If you were pregnant, you're in the grocery store, someone wants to come up and tell you like how to be pregnant and how to raise your kid. And this procedure is no different. Thankfully, I have a very, very supportive group of women around me. And I would tell anybody that if you don't have that supportive group, or if you have people who are making you feel shameful about your own decision because you're on your own path, then you probably need to find a new support group, because aging as a woman is a process. Being a woman is a process. There's a lot that is different about women that men don't understand, kids don't understand. Thankfully, I have a very good support group around me. So I had a mother who said, get rid of them, like no problem, you don't need them. And friends who were like, what can we do to help? Can we bring you food? How can we help you recover? And it really wasn't an issue for me. My dad has always told me that it's better to have, and I've told some friends, it's better to have, if you had $1 worth of friends, it's better to have 4 quarters than 100 pennies, because you just need those few people that are going to be your rock and your team.
Which, P.S., do you know that back in the day of the Golden Girls, they're actually
oh my God, that
our
makes
age?
me feel
They're
so
our
young.
age.
Queenagers.
It's so crazy. Well, Trace, the laws of attraction certainly are in full effect with you, because you are equally as an amazing human being. So I feel like you attract just really wonderful people. So let us all be as fortunate that we can attract incredible women like the two of you in our lives. With that being said, I can only imagine, looking back in those moments, what was going through your head. A lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, trying to navigate through a really important decision with your partner, with the people in your life, what that means for you with these medical professionals. For someone who is facing this decision, whether it be as a choice or as a necessity, which oftentimes it's a necessity, what is some advice that you can give to them, aside from surrounding yourself with wonderful people and wonderful medical professionals? Like, what were some of the things that were going through your head so other women who are facing this can maybe normalize some of those feelings?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think aside from having a good support group, like it really is an individual path, right? And only you can really weigh out what are the pros and cons of a procedure like this. Like clearly there are risks with any surgery. There are some post-surgery things you have to consider with hormone replacement, or whatever path you want to choose, whether that's acupuncture and all the more Eastern medicinal stuff. I think that just sitting down and being able to weigh out what those pros and cons are, and thinking past the surgery was really important to me. So what is my life going to be like without my uterus, without my ovaries? What are the things I'm going to have to consider? I chose to go on hormone replacement therapy, which has really helped me, and in hindsight has been very helpful in helping me manage irritability and some of the things that I had mentioned were popping up that I didn't even realize were part of this whole like menopausal process. And so, but I can only stay on that for, a certain number of more years before it becomes detrimental to my health or risky to my health. So I think it's a process of gathering information and not being afraid to ask, but then understanding that it is truly like your own journey. And my experience is not going to be the same as Dawn, your friend who recently had a hysterectomy, or a friend of mine who came and spoke to me and had one, and her recovery was totally different. You just sort of have to be okay with your decision and ultimately understand that it's your decision to make. Even if you have a doctor that's not supportive or that wants you to try plan A before plan B, before plan C, you're in charge of your own body. We talk a lot about that these days with the election coming up, and you're in control of your body and your choices and what your path is going to be. But I would advise anybody to really truly think about not just the surgery, but the what's next, and then the what's next.
To your point, yes, it's great to have a crew around you. But she was mentioning, and I'm not familiar with the process, but obviously we were talking about my heart surgery going through the groin. Like I know there's different types of hysterectomies, right? There's partial, total, radical. So maybe you could, not that you're a doctor, but maybe you could go into a little bit of those and like how this actually happens. Because Don was saying I don't even remember how it comes out. And I'm like, what? Like, so I don't know if you, not too intense, but kind of go into the like 3 different versions and give us a little bit of an overview, because I'm ignorant.
I definitely want to put an exclamation point on me not being a medical professional. So this is my own take on what it is. But I ended up having a total hysterectomy, which is where they remove the uterus. So I think a partial is where they leave the uterus but leave the cervix and remove the uterus. So I had total, which was removal of all of that. And then the oophorectomy is when they actually take the ovaries out. And I mean, it was a fairly, I don't want to say easy surgery, but I mean, it's just, I have 5 tiny incisions. They go in robotically and that's it. It really wasn't too hard of a recovery. I say that the very first, the hysterectomy that I had in 2022, I actually went back in that same evening with internal bleeding. There was just a problem with something happening inside with the closure of artery. Which was very scary. I think when your iron reaches a level of 7, you need a blood transfusion. And I think I went in at 7.2 by the time I finally got in there. And again, just understanding, they tell you what the risks are, and I think we're of the mindset of like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. It's totally fine. Let me sign this paper. Everything's going to be fine. Aside from that, it was a very simple surgery and very straightforward recovery. I don't want to downplay it into something that is not, risky or major in a woman's life. I like to take a little bit of a back seat when it comes to the actual procedure. And I didn't ask a ton of questions on the how, to be honest.
I kept on waking up and being like, is there anything I can do to help? And the doctors were like, no, Courtney, you got this. So, me, I'm like, what's going on down there? I know. Then they knock me out.
Give her a little more drug. Oh my gosh.
I don't remember it.
Oh
they give
my
me like
gosh.
that amnesia drug, but apparently the nurse was like, we got Courtney White Girl drug today. And I'm like, yes. Sorry. But I was like living my best life and just trying to help out wherever I could.
Oh my gosh, I love it. There's truth to that though. It's like nothing is perfect. It's all science, and like everything is, waking up during something like that if you would have remembered it, was probably very frightening, but yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of controversy still around hormone replacement therapy. There's also been a lot of advancements in physicians that are coming to light and saying, hey, hormone replacement therapy has come a long way and it's not as frightening and doesn't have the repercussions that it was once believed to do. It certainly has to be administered by a physician and in the right choices. But, Trace, you and I have spoken a lot about your experience with hormone replacement therapy and what it's done for you. More and more women, I think, are gravitating towards HRT. There's been a lot of studies that have come out, and again, we're no medical professionals here on Hot Flash Health, but there's been a lot of studies that have been coming out that say that HRT can actually be very beneficial for an aging female with bone density and with neurological conditions and with the prevention of Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that. Without ovaries, you can be on an emotional roller coaster, I would only imagine. What has your experience been in incorporating HRT into your life? What have been some of the most noticeable differences for you with HRT? Perhaps some of the advantages, the disadvantages, things that you've seen, things that people don't talk about. How have you done with HRT as an individual?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that clearly there are risks, and I'm not a medical professional either. The fact that I don't have a uterus, when I had my ovaries removed, I was put on an estrogen patch. I believe if you have your uterus, you also have to take progesterone, which has some risks to it related to breast cancer, I believe. And the estrogen hormone replacement therapy is something that is advisable up to the age of 60. I think once you get towards 60, then there become risks of blood clots and some other things from a vascular perspective. I will have to find another path forward here in a few years, but I think that, like I mentioned before, I think I was having symptoms, or I know at this point that I was having symptoms of menopause prior to having the oophorectomy this past year. I was irritable. I was weepy sometimes. If you ask Seth, he's like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that you cried so much." And I was like, "Okay, I'm not crying that much." And then I would get mad. It's just like, it just compounds. Like the littlest things will set you off and start you just reacting to. And so I think from an emotional and mental state, I feel much more even keel than I did previously, which has been really great because, as you mentioned, Dawn, I'm also raising two teenagers who are in their own throes of puberty and hormonal changes and things. And I like to say I'm surrounded by kickstands. So I'm also surrounded by not women who just don't understand in my house. The woman that's in our house, she's not a woman, she's 8 years old. She doesn't understand either. And so I'm dealing with males who are going through puberty who just don't understand women and their emotions to begin with, and throw the irritability and the mood swings and the emotional side on top of that. It presented, some tense moments, but I think since having the hormone replacement therapy, I feel like I've just been less irritable. I can take a breath when something previously would have upset me, and just have more patience, I think, which has been really helpful. And then, I think that's kind of the main change that I've seen. And then also like the night sweats and the heat. I remember my mom when I was 16. I probably should have realized that this was coming because I was 16. We were on a trip and we were in a hotel. And it was November in New York City, and she was whipping the windows open. And I was like, this woman is crazy. What is she doing? But the heat comes at you from the inside. It's a very bizarre feeling because it's not like, oh, this temperature in this room is hot. It is like, my core is heating up, and what do I do about it? And so that's something that has subsided as well, which has been really nice because I'm not waking up in the middle of the night.
I've been dealing with them too. Dawn's been dealing with them. Obviously, we have this podcast for a reason because we're trying to figure out what is going on with us and how to resolve or not kill anybody. But how was it like for you? You went from 0 to 1,000% in menopause. Like I think a lot of us are like slowly dipping our feet in the hot fucking pool, and you were like jumping in the lava lake.
Yeah. You know what, the thing is, I didn't. I chose what could be a controversial pathway, but they slapped a patch on me during my recovery. And so and so then it was like, does this patch work? Well, I will say they put a patch on me during recovery, which was great. But then the pharmacy, we love pharmacies and insurance and all of those things, right? So unbeknownst to me, they changed the manufacturer of the patch that I was using a month after my surgery. And so I didn't think anything of it. It was the same dosage, same placement, twice a week. Put it on. In like 2 to 3 weeks, I was just like, I am not feeling myself again. Like I started just getting that same sense of like irritability, and I started like things were just not the same. And again, we know our bodies and we're very in tune with what's happening to ourselves. And I called my doctor and I said, this is happening. I don't know what's going on. The only thing that I'm noticing after looking at the package is that this is different. Can this make a difference? And her response was 100%. It's like being on birth control pills or something else. If your body responds to one manufacturer of a medication, it may not respond the same way to another. So the pharmacy fucked me at that point, excuse me. And it was like, and so I called them and they said, well, listen, that's not our preferred medication. I said, I don't care. It's my preferred medication. So, and so they have to specially order in this particular manufacturer of patch for me every month. So that's what I get. And that's what works for me. So I didn't truly get thrown into it on the outset, but I did kind of experience an escalation and uptick of symptoms quite rapidly when the manufacturer change happened. So yeah, I mean, it's not fun. It sucks. Feels awful.
You've touched on two really important points that we really embody at Hot Flash Health, and I'm so glad to hear you as a strong, assertive, incredible women saying them. The first point that you touched on is intuition and really listening to what's going on in your body. And I think as we age, that becomes more clear to us, right? So often we try to push things down and keep going, and the to-do list gets stronger, and no, we can't feel that way, and just ignore, avoid all of the things. And so for that, I'm so proud of you for being intuitive and really listening to your body, and for all of those women out there who are feeling like something is not right and something's going on. Take Tracy's advice and really be intuitive and listen to that. The second thing that you touched on, which I think we as women and as a society are doing a little bit better, is advocating for ourselves, right? You just said, like, that's your preferred medication, but it's not my preferred medication. And unfortunately, for the past 100+ years, women haven't done a great job of advocating for ourselves. So let this all be a lesson that we do need to advocate for ourselves, for our best interests in our health, whether it's with our pharmacy or our physicians or our spouses, partners, whatever that may be. So thank you for that, Trace. I think that that's really, really important. Speaking of partners, I happen to know your amazing and hilarious one. He is really one of a kind, that Seth. We all adore Seth. I know he's been incredibly supportive in you, and you guys have a beautiful partnership. Seeing as though you've gone through this with Seth, with your partner, is there any advice that you might have for other women's partners or husbands or spouses who are supporting them during this difficult time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Since you know Seth, you probably know he's just like, it's fine, it's no big deal, it's fine, it's no big deal, right? Like, he's a very easygoing guy. I think that the best advice that I could give to the spouse of somebody going through this is just to listen and try the best to empathize and believe that these symptoms are happening, believe that your wife or your girlfriend is not crazy, that it can be hormonal. I think that a lot of times women get called crazy and we tend to overreact or escalate something. And a lot of times, like, hormones have a big play in that. We're going through basically a hormonal change that is similar to our kids right now that are teenagers, or when we were pregnant and carrying the miracle of life. Those are three very big moments in life. And so I think understanding and believing that sometimes we may not be in full control and we're dealing with this internally, and then just being supportive. I do think that the way that Seth managed through this was very helpful for me because he is so easygoing. He is very optimistic and positive, and everything is going to be okay. Even when I ended up back in the hospital with the internal bleeding, the way that he managed through that and handled it was wonderful, because it kind of brought me down to a level where I was less scared. I was less nervous about the outcome. And so I think that is just crucially important, is being the yin to your partner's yang during a time like this, right? If you see that your wife or your girlfriend is kind of freaking out and stressing out about this procedure, you've got to come in and be the grounding person. You can't be the person that is like, I know it's a very serious surgery, and it just, then that just like escalates, everything. So it's just really understanding how to be the balance.
Again, you're the medical professional that can really talk to this, but it's a resounding fact to me that 1 in 3 women in the US have undergone a hysterectomy, and still it's like such a mystery, and there's so much silence around it. So I don't know why you feel that there's such a hush-hush connotation around this topic, and have any ideas how we can change it besides being a guest on the Hot Flash Health podcast. I mean, we're changing the world.
I think this is This is an amazing start. And I love what you ladies are doing. I think it is so important. I loved your like woman on the street stuff. Like just getting people talking about it is the first step. And I think as generations go, I think my hope is that, my stepdaughter's generation will even be more open to talking to other women and to society about some of the things that we're facing and that we're going through. And I think anything related to reproductive organs and things, if you think about sex and masturbation and hysterectomies and all of that, nobody my mom's age talks about that. I think my mom has one friend that talks about it, and they all talk about her talking about it because they think it's so funny that she talks about it, but I think our generation of women is just starting to really have these conversations more, and what you guys are doing is amazing to help support and promote that. Whether we like it or not, the political environment is helping bring a lot of these conversations to the forefront about women's bodies and things that, we're experiencing. And so I just think the pay it forward method is really going to help out with that, and passing it on, and Dawn passing on to Keaton that openness and ability to talk through some of these things. And it's just that education that goes from generation to generation. And, you know, women feeling empowered that this is not a taboo topic. This is just part of life. This is just part of who we are as a gender.
And you're so right, Trace, because I can remember you and I talking over cocktails one night, and I'm like, hey, would you be open to being on the podcast and sharing your experience about your hysterectomy and what you went through and your intuition as a woman and your recovery and how the HRT has sort of impacted your life and noticeable differences. And you were so humble in that you were like, I'm just sort of a regular woman who happened to be thrown into this. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what's so cool, is you're a regular woman who's going through what millions of other regular women are going through, and breaking it down like that. No, you're not an expert and you're not a physician, but you're just a real life woman who talks about this stuff, whether it's having wine with girlfriends or at a yoga class or to some stranger in the street or on this Hot Flash Health podcast. So thank you. We embrace people like you, just regular old suburban cougs who happen to be super cool and really vulnerable and transparent and talking about what you're going through.
It's interesting because once you have this, you become part of this like club when you have a hysterectomy, and like people that know somebody like Dawn, you reached out and you said, hey, my friend is doing this. Could you talk to her? And someone else has reached out to me. And so it is through this like word of mouth. It's almost like this like secret women's club or whatever, but it's the connections that people can make to help other women. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about my experience. Now, my experience is maybe not going to be someone else's, but I'm happy to be even just a listener, because a lot of times what we need as women is just someone to listen so that we can talk through it and then eventually get to our own conclusion, right, on what the best path forward is. I am just a regular suburban. I don't know if I'd be a coug. That's older than I am, so I'm not sure how that works.
However, mean, you're a young version of the coug. You're super cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had a girl crush on you from the beginning. I'm like, God, this person
I love
is so
you.
cool. She's laid back. She's got a great taste in music. She can pour tequila
You sound
down
like
her
my
throat
kind of
with the best. It's funny because it's not funny, but on this past Sunday, we had sort of a gathering for that woman, our mutual friend, Tracy, who had a hysterectomy. And I got some cookies made that said, bye, Felicia, with a uterus. We presented them to her, and my kids came home and they were like, Mom, who is Felicia? And why are you saying goodbye to Felicia? And I'm like, no, you guys, it's bye, Felicia. It's a friend of mine who's having a surgery. She's getting rid of her uterus. So anyway, that's, it's good to see more groups and gatherings and supportive situations like that.
I love that. It's a celebration. Like I got a bucket from a friend of mine with the same thing. There was a uterus coloring book, and just, we're making it this like celebratory thing. It's like if someone's going through a mastectomy, it's say ta-ta to the tatas. And, we're embracing this as women and the things we have to go through, and making them a positive, supportive thing instead of a scary, dramatic, taboo thing that we have to go through, which I think is so important, because I think your outlook and your perspective when you're going through this helps with your recovery and helps with the relationships around you. And I love that.
Well,
I love
Yeah.
hearing that. So,
Well, girl, one last question for you before we wrap it up. We want to be respectful of everyone's time here, but you've done an extraordinary job raising these two beautiful boys of yours who are in the throes of puberty, navigating middle school and high school. Yet you've got all of these hormonal shifts and, hormonal awakenings happening in your household. How in the hell are you managing both of it? Because you've got your hormonal shifts, you've got their hormonal shifts. As a mother of two boys, and you've done such a beautiful job of parenting, give us some advice as to how to navigate through boys or girls who are going through puberty while you're going through your own shit.
tequila. Just
Yeah.
kidding. No, I think that it goes back to first of all, starting with yourself, right? Like understanding if there are things going on internally, mentally, emotionally, like the lack of patience, the brain fog, the irritability, like understanding what that is and where it might be coming from and taking care of yourself first, whether that's a hormone replacement therapy or exercise. I know everyone says that exercise is such a crucial part of feeling good. And it's so hard to find the time for it. But if you can just do 10 to 15 minutes a day and like really go for a walk, like just find that time in the morning that is truly yours, because taking care of yourself is the most important thing. But then also empathizing with what they're going through. I have to remind myself continually that my boys don't hate me. They're not trying to be mean to me. They don't not love me. They're just going through their own thing. They are the center of their universe right now, right? And that's just being a teenager and going through that. And I actually laugh. I call my own mother sometimes, and I start with the conversation, did I ever? And before I can even finish, she says, yes, you did. And I was like, damn. So I was that kind of teenager too. And just understanding, like I said before, like the cycle of life, puberty and pregnancy and menopause, like those are three major things that happen in life from a hormonal perspective. And so our kids are going through that too. So just having patience, which sometimes means just walking away and not escalating things into a fight. I found that understanding and coming back to topics when everybody's a little more settled and calm can be helpful. I don't have the girl puberty yet in my household, so I can't speak to that side of it. The boy side is just, a little more apathetic and moody, but not escalated,
I've
which
got the
is what
14-year-old
I'm
girl, so I'm like
anticipating. Yeah,
declaring,
okay,
and
yes, yes.
it's a
So
real shit show here.
it is really interesting though, the difference in puberty between boys and girls, like the difference in path that they take. Yes. So I don't have that quite yet. But I imagine, maybe taking a good walk
Or tequila.
might,
Yeah, I love your story. Like Dawn
yeah.
said, I mean, you're now one of my BFFs virtually, but I can't wait to have our fun off and get to meet you in person. And your story is just so incredible. And thank you for having such the humility to come on and talk and share your story. So we appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you guys for having me.
Remember, menopause may be a wild ride, everyone, but together we've got this. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Hot Flash Health. Stream and subscribe to us on YouTube or Spotify, and share your thoughts with us anytime. We're open. We're here. We want to listen. We want to talk. We want to share. So till next time, stay fabulous, stay sassy, and keep those hot flashes in check. Bye, everyone.